بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So alhamdulillah, we've reached Kitab al-Hajj. Where did we leave off? We had talked about the conditions of Hajj. And they were, in order for me to have an accepted Hajj, what are the things or what are the prerequisites that are required?
Time, place.
Okay, the time and the place are very important, right? Can I make Hajj today?
No.
No, I can't, right? If I made Hajj today, it would be?
Umrah.
It would be Umrah. If I went to Arafah
Oh.
in Muzdalifah,
It would not count.
it wouldn't count, right? So it's like, for example, right now it's time for Salat al-Maghrib. If I made Salat al-Fajr right now and be like, yo, let me get ahead. Can I do it? Can I do that?
Unless you missed the today's.
No, the next one. Coming Fajr.
Okay.
I'm preparing. No, I can't do that. And it's the same thing with Hajj, right? Hajj is very specific to time. It's very specific to a particular place. Can I make Hajj in Falls Church? I cannot make Hajj in Falls Church, right? There's a very specific place I can make Hajj, and there's a very specific place I can make Umrah. And we had said the conditions for the Hajj were these, right? The Muslim, free, sane, adult, he only has to do it once, and ability. And ability, what did we say that, where does ability apply? Okay, so it has to do with physically, right? It has to do with my health, and it has to do with what else? Finances, right? And finances, we said in the madhāhib, it applies to two things. Finances for what and finances for what?
For the trip itself and for the family.
Good. So for the trip itself and for the family. And even for the trip, they further divided it. You guys remember? So it has to actually be for the conveyance, right? For me to actually get to where it is that I'm going, and also what?
Sustenance.
And for the sustenance on the trip. Is there any exception to this? Do you guys know? I don't think I mentioned it before,
Yeah.
but the Malikis have they have an exemption for this, right? So, yeah, for this, they're like, so for them, it's their ability isn't about actually having the sustenance. They put the condition of what?
Logistically reaching there.
So you have the potential. That's what matters to them, is that you actually have the potential to earn that amount. You have the potential to get some of that funding. Can we move the table up a little bit so we can have, yeah. Let me get my mask out first. So we had said that it's the potential to be able to earn along the trip, right? So if I don't have enough money, but there is a potential for me to earn enough to actually make it there and to make it back, then according to the Malikis, this would be completely acceptable and this would be completely reasonable. For the Ḥanbalis, or for the Jumhur, I won't say just the Ḥanbalis, they say that you actually need enough for the trip itself, for the conveyance and for the trip, right? You actually need, these are the two things that are necessary in order for an individual to make Hajj. And in the madhab for women, what is the other part of ability that this falls under? To have a mahram, right? To have a mahram. And we said there was an exception to that. Who gave exception to? So if a woman wanted to make Hajj without her mahram, or is there anybody who made exception to that? Or the Malikis were one, and the Shafi'is, right? So the Malikis and the Shafi'is, they made exception to that. They said that, but in what condition, in what situation? If she, not if she's doing on behalf of someone.
She's safe.
Well, if she's safe, but even before that, the first step is if she can't find a mahram, right? If she can't find a mahram, then it is permissible for her to go and make Hajj. And we added extra conditions. What were some of those conditions? That the path be safe, right? Even Imam Shafi'i himself, he mentions ma'unat an-nisa, that if it's a group of women that happen to be traveling together, then it is okay for them all to make Hajj together. And why? It's again that concept of safety, that she's with the group. There are other people who can look out for her if in case she gets separated, right? Hajj is now it's a little bit more organized, but before it was pretty chaotic. Like people were just coming in from all different places, different ways. Even getting even in the modern era, getting from the airport to Mecca wasn't the most comfortable ride. Things have gotten significantly better now, and they've significantly improved, even with the Jamarat. If you guys ever do get a chance, take a look at the old Hajj videos and just look at how people used to make Hajj. It's so much better now. Like, it was so much more challenging before. So these are some of the things that we had talked about. Overall stability, he has to pay off his debts before he travels, unless what? So if I have debts, does this mean I can't make Hajj? Like, for example, if I'm making payments on a house, can I make Hajj or no?
Yes.
Why? Technically, I don't have the money because I owe $200,000 on my house.
Because the payment is partial, and if you don't miss the
Good.
due date.
Right. So, and not just that. So if there's a difference between having a lump sum payment, and not just that, overall, there's also this idea of, does the creditor care? Right. This is something that's really important. But for example, if Miguel owed me $5,000 and he's like, yo, I'm making Hajj. That's a different situation. Over here, if he made Hajj, would that be okay? No, it wouldn't.
With your permission and blessing.
He would need my permission, right? He would need my permission. Can he hold me spiritually hostage?
Yeah.
Right? Can he be like, it's an obligation. You need to fear Allah. I'm doing it to better myself. My mother, she was really looking forward to me making dua. I mean, he could do all that, but at the end of the day, do I have to give in to the spiritual blackmail?
Yeah.
No, I don't, right? Because this money is my right? This money is my right. But if he has the permission of the creditor, yes, it's fine. Yeah.
Student loans?
Same thing. So any type of loan that I have that the creditor doesn't really care. So with student loans or with a mortgage or payments on a car or whatever the case might be, in those situations, does the debtor really care where I am? No. What do they care about? They care about their payments. That's it. So as long as I'm making the payments to them, I could be making Hajj, I could be in Tanzania, I could be, I could be in Russia. It doesn't make a difference to them. They only care about receiving their payments. So as long as you're making those payments, stay. But what if I don't have the ability to make the payments? Can I make Hajj? And that's the only situation where I wouldn't be. If I didn't have the ability to make the payments. So if I knew if I made Hajj, I wouldn't be able to pay my mortgage, or I wouldn't be able to pay off my monthly payments on my car. So I'm already in debt, right? So the both situations I'm in debt, right? But the debt is of a different kind. There's a difference between being in debt and able to make the payments, and being in debt and being unable to make the payments. You guys follow with me? Right, maintaining. So in one situation, if I pay the $7,000 to go for Hajj, I'll probably miss a couple car payments, or I'm going to miss a couple payments on my student loan, or I'm going to miss a house payment. In this situation, can I go for Hajj? Shar'an, I can't. Shar'an, I can't. But if I can maintain all those things and still go for Hajj, then that's fine. That's completely reasonable. There's nothing wrong with that.
People's right, right in this case, then Allah's right.
Yes, absolutely. Like, so the thing is, and not just that, would Allah, or I won't say would, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asking us to make Hajj when we are financially unable to? Right? The obligation doesn't even fall on me, right? The obligation is there, but it doesn't actually descend on me. It doesn't actually fall on me as an individual. And that's something that's important to keep in mind.
A little bit of a deeper question.
Sure.
If one is making a mortgage, which is interest, and you go to Hajj, I mean, the purpose of going to Hajj is, one, it's obligatory, and two, to have your sins forgiven if it's accepted. Sure. But if you're in the middle of making interest, mortgage,
yeah.
What's the point of going to Hajj?
Okay, so they're layered. There's like layers to that question. The first one is understanding, number one, what the situation of the person is who purchased the home. Right. I think that's something that's really important. And the second one is when I'm purchasing a house, am I eating interest or am I giving interest? There's a difference. Am I earning interest off a house? when I purchase it through a mortgage? So I'm not actually consuming interest, which is different. And the reason that I'm purchasing the home, that also depends. Are there scholars who allow for an individual to make a usury-based transaction in order to preserve his wealth? I'm asking, is there or no? Are there scholars or yes?
Yeah.
Yes, there are. So I understand at this point that there's a difference of opinion. Once there's a difference of opinion in something, does that allow the issue to become black and white now? It's not. Now it's gray. Can this person be falling into haram? Possibly. But at the end of the day, that's his decision. And he's going to be accountable for that. Saying that, if he believes he's doing something halal and he goes for Hajj, it wouldn't make a difference. Or the opposite holds true. What if he's making Hajj, hoping to make Hajj and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help him out of that situation? Right? Because sometimes people get involved into things like, for example, a person owns a liquor store. He wasn't practicing, or he came into Islam and now he has a liquor store. This is the only avenue of income that he has. He has all this money and he wants to make Hajj. And one of the reasons he wants to make Hajj is that he wants to go and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help him get out of this business. So I think it's important to, like, there are situations where the Prophet ﷺ, he mentions very clearly that you will have an individual who is covered in dust with his hair disheveled, turning and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive him. And Allah will say to you that your income is haram, your food is haram, and your drink is haram. Right? Those situations exist too. But there's a difference between consuming haram and partaking in it. Like, for example, if somebody has a substance abuse problem and they buy alcohol, it's very different. Would you say what his kids are consuming is haram? He's an engineer, and the money that he's earning is from designing bridges and etc. And that's the money that's coming into the house. But he goes and he purchases and he consumes alcohol. Does that money affect the children? No, it doesn't, right? Because his income is halal. The way he's using it is haram. So I think there's a lot of things that need to be compartmentalized when it comes to those particular issues. And what people fall into, I think that while that's important, it's important to also realize that everybody's at a different level, right? So like everybody's at a different stage in their life. And we never know what the purpose is for someone, whether it be coming to the masjid, whether it be making umrah, whether it be the first time that they're fasting, that maybe that spark was their catalyst to get them to start practicing now. So, may Allah protect us all. So we had spoken about the mahram. We had talking about neglecting also. We talked about the bedel also, right?
Yeah.
Did we talk about this?
Yeah.
We finished this or no?
Oh, we didn't.
Well, we didn't. Okay, good. So there's a difference now between validity and acceptability. So we said the ideal situation, who should be the one that's making Hajj? Ideally. I'm sorry? Oh, the one who can afford it, for sure. The one who, the free. Healthy, Muslim, right? So these I'm sorry?
Alive.
Alive, living, right? Well, right?
Well,
It depends.
because the air is supposed to, it's good to make for him if he was able to do that, but it would be better if he did.
If he did, right? If he was living, right? So the thing is that, like, these are all general conditions and these are all ideal situations. Okay, but what if someone bends the rules a little bit? So in the madhāhib, we said that a condition for a woman to make Hajj was a mahram, right? That she needs a man to accompany her, or, whether it be her husband or her father, her brother, her uncle, her son, whatever. But now her brother is like, he has the money, but he's being neglectful. And he's putting it off and he's like, I don't feel like making Hajj. She should, in the madhab, what is she supposed to do? Huh? No. What is she supposed to do in the madhab? Her brother is her only mahram, and he has the money and he has the ability, but he's like, I'm not going. And she has the money and she has the ability.
You go back home?
In the madhab.
She just waits.
She waits. Ahsant.
Oh, you can go with the imam?
No.
No.
I mean, she could try, but I'm going to say lack. No. What's your madhab? No, but in this situation, she would have to wait. What if she's like, I'm not waiting. I don't know when this opportunity is going to come again. I'm going.
Switch another madhab.
So she switches the madhab before she goes. And then when she comes back, she switches back again. No, let's assume there's a consistency in madhab. And she is insistent and she goes. She goes, she makes Hajj. In the madhab, is her Hajj valid?
Yes.
Yes, it is. But sinful, right? There's a penalty. What is the penalty? The penalty. So does she have to do a kafara? Does she have to slaughter? No. In the madhab, she would not have to slaughter, but it would be considered a sin. But she's also going for Wallahu alam. I mean, that's like so the thing is, this is something that we had talked about previously, and we had said that in certain madhahib, it's okay for her to go with other women. Like she doesn't, it's not a condition. If she's not able to find a mahram, then she can go with a group of women as long as it's safe, as long as it's safe for her to go. So that's the only thing. But in the madhab, it would be considered, there would be some kind of, there wouldn't be a kafara, but it would be a sin that she didn't do that. Now, whether Allah chooses to forgive that or not, because at the end of the day, like even when it comes to the madhab and this like that, all of these things fall down to what I believe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I believe I'm doing something wrong, then to me, that what I'm doing is going to be what? It's going to be a sin, right? It's going to be a sin to me, regardless of what other people feel about it. And even the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Al-iman ma haka fi sadr." He said, "Iman is that thing that gnaws at your heart, right? It's the thing that pulls at your heart." So even though you might have people, and he said, "Walau aftak nas." He said, even if people give you fatwa. What does that mean? That sometimes we'll hear something, and sometimes they'll reinforce what it is that we want to do, but I still have something tugging at my heart, and there's still something pulling at my heart. In this situation, what am I obligated to do? I'm obligated to follow my heart. Why? Because at the end of the day, the Prophet he said, "Istafti qalbak." He said, "Ask your heart." And if my heart is still telling me to do no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to ask me about the people who I asked. He's going to ask me, he's like, "Well, you had this feeling, why didn't you act on it? There's something that was pulling you away and stopping you from doing it, you still did it. Why? If you're uncomfortable with it, why'd you go through with it?" And this is something that's important to keep in mind. And regardless of what we hear, regardless of what people tell us, ultimately we are accountable to ourselves, and then we are accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So her Hajj would be valid. So if a disbeliever or somebody who is clinically insane made Hajj, it wouldn't count. The Hajj would be unaccepted. So you can have somebody who doesn't believe in Allah or doesn't believe in His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they make Hajj, they perform all the rituals, they perform all the rites, but their Hajj would not be accepted. Or somebody who is clinically insane. How would that happen? Realistically.
If someone took that.
So exactly, somebody took them along. Somebody took them along for that Hajj, and they moved them through all the motions, they moved them into the different locations. But even then, this Hajj would not be acceptable. So situations where it would be accepted, but still an unfulfilled obligation. Can you guys think of some situations where this would apply? That the Hajj would be okay, that this Hajj is accepted, but they would still be obligated to perform it. Coronavirus, Allahu Akbar. Like, so even in coronavirus, if I made Hajj, I'd have to make it again.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. I thought it was.
Meaning I would get, this group of people, they would actually get the reward, but they'd still be obligated to do the Hajj.
Kids.
Children, ahsant, good. Who else? It's one more group of people. Think about it. Who is not obligated to make Hajj but still can? Slaves, ahsant. Right? So it would be children and slaves. These two groups. Why? Because they're not obligated. The obligation hasn't fallen upon them yet. So for a child, when would he have to do it? Once he hits puberty, once he's an adult. And a slave, once he's free. All right, now individuals who it's valid for, meaning that there's a shortcoming in their Hajj. Because they performed it. They shouldn't have, but they still did. Okay, the woman who goes without mahram. Who else?
The poor.
Oh, the one who's in debt, right? The one who's in debt. So the one who's indebted, right? He has some type of debt and he still goes, then his Hajj would be valid, but there would be a shortcoming in it because, right? Because he would, because he went without the creditor's permission, or the woman who went without mahram. Right? Yes.
So they accepted but still remain unfilled. Does that mean like what does that exactly mean? Does it mean like they completed their obligation? Or?
So here the slave went for Hajj, right? He was with his master and he performed all the rites of the Hajj. His master gave him permission to do it. Does he get reward?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. He gets a reward. Then a year later, his master frees him.
Let's do it again.
He has to do it again. But did he get reward for the previous Hajj? Absolutely. But it is not considered what we call Hajjat al-Islam, meaning the obligatory Hajj has not been fulfilled. For the child, it becomes a little bit more complicated. When a child makes Hajj, what happens to their reward? I'll already tell you there's a difference of opinion. When a child does a good deed, when a child prays, or a child gives sadaqah, or a child fasts, or a child, in this case, makes Hajj. What does that mean? For the child, what is it? For the slave, you guys, it makes sense. Why? Because there's taklif here, right? There's accountability here. That is a slave above sinning. Can a slave not sin? Oh, absolutely, right? If a slave lies or a slave backbites or whatever, they're still sinning and they're still accountable for that sin. But if a child lies, is there spiritual accountability? There might be accountability from the parents, right? There might be accountability from society, but will Allah hold the child accountable for lying? No. So when it comes to deeds, good deeds of a child.
Good deeds are accepted, but bad deeds are excluded.
Okay, so they're excused for the bad, accepted, meaning that it stays in their register until they hit puberty. That's one opinion.
Well, they just don't count, period.
That's another opinion.
Something telling me that
The parents get the reward. That's another opinion. And sometimes, or a combination of the two, like a combination between the child and the parent getting the reward.
What proportion?
Allahu A'lam. Keep it.
What proportion?
Yeah, Allahu A'lam. Listen, this is why Allah is who He is, because He knows how to ratio all of these things. And He understands the depth of intention. He understands the power of the intention. He understands the tenacity sometimes of the action, or how present somebody is during particular actions. It is clearly a divine calculation that is beyond any of us. So how it's done, Allahu A'lam. Like, Allah knows best. All right, the sites of ihram. What is ihram? It's a state. Ahsant. It's not what? Well, it can be, right? It can be, because what the wrap that the men wear, we call that ihram. But when we talk about ihram is actually a state of being. Another good example of this is like salah. Like when we're praying, it's actually a state of praying, because there are certain things that you can do. Even the first takbirah that we make in salah is called what? Takbiratul ihram. Like ihram, it comes from the word haruma, right? It comes from the word that impermissible. What is impermissible during prayer?
moving too much,
Right? Unnecessary movement, talking. Oh, okay. Yeah, being in a state of impurity. What else? Eating, drinking, al-khilaf. During Nawafil, right? Hadith ibn Zubair. So there you Zubair. So we have different states. Now the state of ihram, when it comes to Umrah or when it comes to Hajj, what is the person not allowed to do? And we'll talk about them, but just very quickly, some of the ones that come to mind.
Dress their own way.
I'm sorry?
Dress their own way.
Right. So you can't wear regular clothing. You can't wear regular clothing.
Women have to show their face, right?
Yeah. So yes. So they have it gets a little bit tricky. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that they shouldn't wear gloves. وَلَا تَتَنَقَّبُوا. So tatanaqab means don't draw over your face so that only you can see your eyes. So what does that mean they can do? No, they can't wear niqab for sure. So what can they do in its place?
They can cover, like keep not completely wear, but cover.
No, they can completely cover. And so women who wear niqab, traditionally, what they do when they go for Hajj is that they will wear something that covers their entire face, but the material is thinner, right? The material is thinner so that they can actually still see. So that, I mean, that's about ihram. So the sites of ihram, what does that mean?
There's a perimeter, or how do you say it?
Yeah, there's like a zone, right? There's a zone where you have to take ihram from, right? That they're called it's called the ihram zone. Basically, it is in that space, meaning that if you pass that space, what do you have to do?
Enter the state of ihram.
Right? So if you go to that space, you actually have to enter the state of ihram. Right? You're obligated at that point to enter the state of ihram if your intention is to make Hajj or Umrah. So this is a map of what it actually looks like. Dhul Hulayfa, for those of you who have made Hajj or Umrah before, it's right outside Medina. It's right outside Medina. And then you have Rabiq, which is on the coast. You have That Irq, you have Qarn al-Manazil, and then you have Yalamlam. So these 5 are the mawaqit, or the places of ihram. That Irq, there's a, I know there's a difference of opinion on whether this was appointed by Umar or it was something that was prophetic, but wallahu alam, I think this is something that what the Umar took from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So based on the map and based on what we know about the Arabs, why do you guys think that the miqat are made in this way or put in these positions? Space for people. And what do you mean?
Like, I guess.
So basically what's happening, like what these mawaqit are to enter ihram to go where? Right, they're all to go to Mecca. Everything, all basically, if I could put arrows, and I probably should have, right? All of these are going to Mecca. So if I continued the arrows in the other way, where would they go? They'd go to different places, right? So if we actually, that irq is meant to be for the people of like toward Iraq, right? Toward Iraq. Qarn Manazil is meant to be for the people who are Najd. Najd is the plateau or the plain that's in the center of Saudi Arabia. Yalamlam is for Yemen, it's for the south. Rabiq is for those people who are coming by sea, right? For those people who are coming, Ethiopia is much further south, but this is for the people who are coming by sea, for like from Egypt or whatnot. And Dhul Hulayfa is for the people who are coming from Medina or from Syria or from Sham. So that's basically the idea behind these mawaqit. So the miqat sites, there are these 5, right? These are the 5 that we had mentioned. These are the 5 that we spoke about. This is for the people of Medina, the people of Sham, Maghrib, Egypt, Yemen, Najd, and Mashriq. Mashriq being the east. And if you're coming by the sea, there are some modern scholars that also have included what? Jeddah. Why? Why Jeddah?
The first location
Mhm.
of the sea, someone.
Okay. Why? I mean, but why Jeddah? How did they come up with that?
Or is it an island?
So it's actually because what they did was they calculated if you go straight down here and you go straight across here, that the Jeddah actually still falls within the zone. So you see this little map, like this curved map here, it still falls within the zone. And not just that, Jeddah, Rabiq, nobody uses. Like it's a very small seaport now. Not too many people use it. Almost every, like if you're coming, like human travel, a vast majority of it comes into Jeddah, right? Jeddah airport. This is where people come in. And this is why scholars have allowed it and made it, or certain scholars have allowed it and made it a miqat. So what about if I live outside of those? No, it should be inside, I think. Yeah, it should be inside, right? Inside makes more sense. So, okay, pretend that says inside. I'll fix it. So if you live inside the miqat zone, where do you make ihram from? Do you have to go back out? No, you actually don't. Wherever your home is, if you live within that zone, then you would make ihram from that space, from your house. Except for the people of Mecca. There is khilaf with a majority of them saying that the people who live in Mecca, they actually have to what? Where would the people of Mecca go? If I lived in Mecca, where would I go? I'd have to leave, right? So just like, man, I should have done that, man. Huh? What?
Is it only for Umrah or for Hajj as well?
So for Umrah only, not for Hajj. Okay, and when we talk about like what you have to do, it'll make more sense. Like right now, I know it probably doesn't make a lot of sense.
So the people
But
that
for-
live in Mecca would have to leave Mecca and
to
come back?
make Umrah, yes. So to make Hajj, they'd actually make it from their homes, but the same thing applies to the Hajjaj. So when the Haji, like what happens is people who make what do you call it? Not Qiran. Sure, I forgot the tamattu. Yeah, I'm sorry. Jazakallah khair, I forgot the word. So the people who come from outside who make Hajj tamattu, they would actually make Umrah first. When they first come in, they make Umrah, and then what happens is that a lot of the people from their hotels, they'll take ihram again to go for Hajj, because at that point they'll be considered from the people of Mecca. So just like there's a zone here, there's actually a zone here too, and I should have included that. I'm really sorry, but I'll add the map in. But basically, there's a zone here, and this zone is called what? Do you guys know? That zone is called the Haram. That's the sanctuary zone, right? That's the sanctuary zone, meaning that this is the defined space of what? Masjid al-Haram, right? That defined zone or that defined space is actually Masjid al-Haram. That is Makkah. That is what we consider to be Makkah. And it is a definitive line. For those of you, again, who've made Hajj or Umrah, they actually have up pillars to talk about, like, this is the boundary, right? This is the Hajj, this is the Haram boundary, or this is the sanctuary boundary. And so what you would have to do if you lived inside Makkah is you'd have to go outside that boundary and come back. And they're clearly defined. They're clearly defined. How they're defined is you have a few historical hadith, and you have a few historians where basically Jibril, he told the Prophet ﷺ the boundaries of Makkah. And after he told him the boundaries, and this was something that was passed down by certain traditions, you have historians now who've actually marked those places and marked those spaces. Sure.
So someone who wanted to do Hajj, you have to go out that boundary?
No, Hajj is different, right? Umrah, you make it coming in, but Hajj, depending on the type of Hajj. So there are 3 types of Hajj, and we'll get to those inshallah. But basically, you have tamattu, qiran, and ifrat. So those 3 types of Hajj, it really depends how you do it. But in general, you would go outside if you're making Umrah, but not so much Hajj. The only time this becomes problematic is when you have, so for example, if I go to make Hajj and I make Umrah and I stay in Makkah, I complete my Umrah, and there's still a week until Hajj starts. Then I go to Medina. What happened?
Got out of the
I exited the zone. So now when I re-enter the zone, am I obligated to?
all the way.
Yeah. You know,
outside Medina.
Yeah, because I'm outside Medina, I enter Ihram and I stay in Ihram until Hajj starts. Or am I not obligated to because I don't have the intention? And again, there's khilaf on that. But there are some groups that do that. They actually will come, they'll land in Mecca, they'll make Umrah, then they'll go to Medina, they'll spend a couple days in Medina, and then they'll come back. Is Medina part of the Hajj?
Yes.
No, it's not.
No.
I can make my entire Hajj without ever having to go to Medina. I mean, it's part of
the Hajj package.
it's part of the Hajj, yeah, it's part of the Hajj packages, but it's not actually part of the Hajj itself. Saying that, like, why would you not go to Medina? Unless you're like really, really stuck on time, it's really a waste. So like we said, they must exit the haram area and re-enter it with ihram. This is the people of Mecca. So what about an individual who does not pass by a miqat? Like I'm between where I live, I'm between two miqat, and I'm coming down into that space. What do I do then? It could be the airport. It could be an airport, or it could be I live like let's go back. So let's say I live right here, and I'm not going to go down, and I'm not going to go up. Right? I just want to come straight to Mecca.
You draw a line between 2 points.
Okay, so I would actually figure out, and I would approximate where the quote unquote ihram zone is. And that's something that's important. And how is that calculated? How do we figure that out? So you should take closest miqat to him in parallel. So there are a few ways to do it. How do I determine the miqat zone? Number one is a straight line between the miqats. A straight line between them. The second way would be a curved line, like a circular type line connecting them. And the last one would be drawing a parallel line at the furthest point. So what does this actually look like? So if we go back to this map, one way to do it would be just to go straight up, straight down, straight like this, continue here, straight like this, continue here. This would be the furthest point here. This would be the furthest point here, going up. So it would be like a giant, not like a rectangle, but it would be very blocky.
Whatever's closest to you.
Yeah, so basically whatever the block is. So for example, if I lived right here, there's one way for me to determine it. Either I can continue this straight up like this. If I did it like that, I would be right here, right? So that according to that, where would I be? I would be inside the miqat zone. So where would I take ihram? From my house, okay? According to this curve, like so, or if I drew a straight line right here, if I just drew a straight line between all of these, which is also possible, yes? I draw a straight line between them, and let's say this straight line here like this, and I live right there. What would I do? I would be outside the zone. And this curved line is like this, right? So you have this curved circular type line here. What would I do? I would still be outside the zone, and I would take ihram right here, right? Because that's where I'm entering. Why those three ways to determine the zone? So we said one was a parallel, one was straight lines, and one was the curved lines. Why do we have these different systems? Yeah.
Some of the points have, all of these points have one of these three approaches.
So here, let's look at them one by one. If I drew all of these in parallel and I drew it like really boxy, what advantage does that have or what disadvantage does that have?
It would be safe. It's an advantage for someone who lives.
Right. Yeah. So the thing is like, it's probably the safest, right? It's the most conservative way because now I've drawn the furthest possible lines from all of the points. In the straight lines, if I drew straight lines between all of them, what is the advantage or disadvantage of that?
You probably have to move into the zone.
So if we said that the boxy lines was the safest, this is the most. If I drew a straight line from here to here, and here to here, and here to here, and here to here, what is that?
How would it be unsafe?
It's not necessarily unsafe, but it would be the most risky, right? It would be the most liberal, it would be the most risky one. Because there, even though, and the circular one is why the scholars kind of use it. Why? Because it's in between, right? It's in between the two. Because the boxy one is like, okay, you're like really increasing the zone into spaces that, wallahu alam, even if it applies or not. And the riskiest one, it's like, okay, a person actually might be in the ihram zone, which is why it would be risky. If a person did his ijtihad and be like, no, you can't increase on a place that Allah or his messenger put, and I'm going to take ihram from this. You have every right to that. Like I'm not saying there's a right or wrong. The Prophet ﷺ, he didn't say when you determine the miqat zone, make sure that it's circular. When I mean, like there's nothing like that. Or use the longitude and the parallels when you determine it. It wasn't there. There's nothing like that. This is all just ijtihad, right? This is all just deductive reasoning based on the locations of these miqat. But it's just kind of interesting how it just comes around like this, right?
I was wondering the planet
Mhm.
Earth itself is curved.
It's curved. Oh, how would this look like on
Yeah,
a circular
on the
map?
globe, on the globe.
Should I make that a homework assignment? Well, I mean, this isn't even to proper scale, honestly. Qarn al-Manazil is actually a little bit more north of Mecca. It's like closer to here. and I think that irq is further out. So I don't think this is the scale either. I should have done a Google map, but I couldn't find all the miqat on the Google. Yeah, I couldn't get them all on the Google Earth. So this was the best map I could find, unfortunately.
With box lines, all this data, you could include a location you should not have included, and they would start from their houses.
Yeah.
I don't think there are a lot of people in the desert, but
No, one of the interesting things about Saudi is that when you look at these, when you look at the space, like for example, from Mecca to Jeddah, it's about, I want to say about 70 kilometers, about 50 miles, right? From Mecca to Jeddah. You know how many major highways there are between Mecca and Jeddah? There's one. Yeah, there's one. And then there's an old highway, which runs kind of parallel to it. And it's called Tariq al-Qadim. It's called the old way to Mecca. And that was actually the original route that went from Jeddah to Mecca. What about over here? Do you guys think there's any road over here that goes to the coast? No. There's not. There's a path that goes. Yalamlam is actually much closer to Mecca. It's really not that far. But you can actually go down, and it goes straight through. So from Mecca to go south, there's actually one highway. From Mecca to Qarn al-Manazil is a little bit before Taif, but after this is Taif. And there is one highway. And then from Taif to Riyadh, there is one highway. And you'll find that there are roads that kind of branch off and they lead to smaller villages. But in general, there is no, like in the United States, how there's a network, you don't have that same network. Why? Sure, you guys have a good idea. I think the color kind of gives it away. It's all desert, right? It's all desert. And in the desert, where can you live? In very specific places, in places either where there's water being supplied to you, right, through city water, or water is being brought to you, right? These are the only two ways. This is why you won't have someone like living out in the middle of nowhere versus in the United States. How come we can have people who live out in the middle of nowhere? Because there's so many natural resources, right? There's so many natural resources, but I can get access to it. I can dig deep enough and eventually I'll hit what? I'll hit a well, right? I'll hit an aquifer, I'll hit a well. And I can, if I have water, it becomes that much easier to have everything else. What is the only resource I'll find like right here? Sand.
oil.
and oil, right? Oil's it's not very satiating to drink, right? Or sun, right? So I might be able to get electricity, but I won't be able to actually get any water, which is the main problem, which is why you don't have a network. You don't have a network in Saudi because it's all desert. Like the entire country is desert. The entire country is desert, save a few mountain ranges, right? So there are a few mountain ranges that you will find green. So starting here in Taif, how did this turn into a geography class? But like starting here in Taif, you have Taif and then you have Al-Baha and then you have Abha, right? These are like, it's like part of like a smaller mountain range there. And you will have greenery in those spaces, in those places. And if you go north of Medina, you have Tabuk, right? So Tabuk is also in a mountain and you actually get snow. It gets high enough. There's a mountain that's called Jabal Lawz, or the mountain of almonds, or Almond Mountain, and it actually gets snow sometimes. So there's definitely a lot of scenery.
Fun fact about roads in the desert, you have to literally clean them from sand. Otherwise,
Yes.
it will just completely corrupt.
So so what's interesting is that when like I lived there for like 10 years, and then I think my first or second year, I was like, yo, why are all these bulldozers just like pushing sand around on the side of the highway? And that was the reason. because the wind would just blow the sand all onto the road. But it's actually amazing how well maintained the roads are. You guys have any idea why? Because it's the tar is a byproduct of the oil. So they just keep putting down layers because it's just a byproduct. And the same thing with electricity. Electricity, now it's more expensive, but it's always been cheap because they just burn crude. Like there's so much extra oil. They just burn crude. So electricity is cheap, gas is cheap, tar is cheap. Plastic bags, one of the things that really, when I was there, one of the things I noticed as soon as I came back, the quality of the plastic bags here is so cheap. Over there, I felt the quality was much better. Why? Because plastic is a byproduct of crude. So it's, and one of the major institutions is, it's actually on the East Coast. I want to say King Abdullah University. No, not King Abdullah. There's like a petroleum university. I forgot which one it is, but it's somewhere on the East Coast. But anyway, what they do, they refine plastics, like all of these things. It comes from, it's amazing the number of byproducts that come from oil that I was not aware of until I moved there. So back to Mirkhot. So do I need to take ihram every time I go to Mecca?
Is it for specifically for Umrah?
I'm going to Mecca. I have a cousin that lives there. Do I have to take ihram? It depends if he's a frequent visitor or he's an infrequent visitor. Yeah. So if a frequent visitor is, he's exempted. Like I'm constantly going there. I live in Jeddah. I'm going for business. So I'm going back and forth. I'm exempted. Like what if I go infrequently, even if I have a cousin that lives there? There's a difference of opinion, right? There's a difference of opinion over that. In the madhāhib, he's obligated. In the madhāhib, he's obligated. So if I go infrequently, if I go like, once every 3 months to go visit my cousin in Mecca, I have to make Umrah. Why? Why obligated? Not for family. Think about why obligate Umrah.
Force them all the time.
I'm sorry? Yeah.
Force them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah,
Umrah is fard according to the Ḥanbali.
It is, but how many times is it fard? Once.
But this is all the time.
This is someone who's going like often again. Why would they make it an obligation? To magnify the sanctity of the place. That's all it is. It's just a matter of respect and sanctity of the place. And this is why, I mean, but I think it's only the Ḥanbalis that say it's an obligation. There might be another madhab that does too, but it's essentially it's not. But the reason that they obligate it is to show the sanctity and the importance of that space and of that place. And Allah knows best. We'll stop here, inshallah. And we'll continue with the Hajj and Umrah next time, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqi nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sallam. Do we have any questions? Yeah.
So last week when you said about like a woman traveling by herself,
Yeah.
you mentioned like 3 things that like has to be saved. It was
Permission.
So I guess that was another thing. I think I took that down. Were those conditions or were those like things that you should keep in mind?
So the only condition, like the only actual condition is safety, right? That is a mandated safety. But the other ones, like, making sure a mahram knows or getting permission from a mahram, that depends on her situation. So if she's, for example, if she's living with her husband or she's living with her father, then she's mandated at that point. But if she lives separately, she doesn't. It's better to inform them, but she doesn't have to. Okay. Oh, so any other questions? Oh, the time changes on Sunday, inshallah. From next week, class will be at 6:30. That's her job. No. You heard that, Ramsha?
I did.
All right. So if it doesn't happen, you guys can blame her.
What
Yeah.
is this?
Tazkiyah will be after Isha. So from next week, Salat Isha will be, it's fixed at 7:30. So it'll be 7:30 for like the next few months. The Fiqh class will be an hour before Isha, which is at 6:30. And then the Tazkiyah class will be after Isha, inshallah. Yes. I've gotten less lazy with the translation. So we'll be more consistent, inshallah. طيب جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك.